Hello and welcome to Return to the Mother Online Summit, where we have gathered together wisdom keepers, theologians, spiritual teachers, and inspirational speakers to share their knowledge and insights as we explore the concept of the divine feminine, goddess consciousness, and earth awareness, and whether there are any interconnecting threads as to how women are treated and anything feminine is perceived in a world that is so deeply rooted in patriarchy. My name is Frances Billinghurst, your host for and the creatrix of this event, and I'm coming to you from Kaurna country here in South Australia. As such, I acknowledge the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains as being the traditional custodians of the land upon which I reside. So manina padi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining me. I'm delighted to welcome Karen Brown. Welcome, Karen. Thank you very much for being part of this event.
Thank you so much, Frances. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
You're more than welcome. And for anyone who's not familiar with her work, based in Toronto, Canada, Karen is a certified professional coactive coach, CPCC, a movement facilitator and certified facilitator of Dr. Christine Page's Women's Mysteries for the Modern Woman. She supports women through personal and career transitions, initiations, and other mysteries of the second half of life, the feminine wisdom way. Drawing from or on more than 25 years experience working with clients in a public relations area and marketing communications, she also loves to help women uncover their soul essence and how to express it through all aspects of their life. Karen's mission is to help women reclaim joy, vitality, and meaning, and be fully active in their leadership and power during the most transformative time in their life through remembering who they truly are, archetypal wise woman. Karen also offers private and small group coaching and consulting, online and in-person projects and events, and holds sacred space for creative soulpreneurs to birth their soul-based projects into the world. She has also created a supportive community of women deepening into feminine wisdom practices through her membership journey, the WiseWoman Way, and all of this can be found on her website, which is listed under this recording. So do check it out. The title of Karen's presentation for us today is Returning to the Mother at Midlife, Initiation of the Wise Woman. And this is tapping into, I suppose, being a woman myself, being at a certain age where we seem to fall through the cracks and be very much ignored. So Karen, I'm delighted to be talking with you today. Thank you very much for taking part of these discussions as we also explore the interweaving threads between the absence of the divine feminine, of Mother Earth or nature, and goddess consciousness. So I'd like to begin our discussion by handing it over to you and asking if you're able to share a little bit of your backstory and also how you came involved in women's mysteries, the work that you're doing today.
Yeah, thank you. Oh gosh, it's a tough one. I'm gonna try to synthesize, and I have no idea what I'm going to say, but I'll just speak organically, and we'll see what comes out. So I think for me, like many women, I think there's two possibilities. I think sometimes something happens. There's an event, a shock, a something that awakens you to the mysteries, to the divine feminine. And then there's the other, which I think might be more my story, more of a sort of a slow path, a meandering journey and awakening at different points where there were little descents and ascents, over time that I guess they have more of a trajectory like this. So you're gradually kind of awakening and opening and unfolding to more of the mystery of the Great Mother over time. But I can't point specifically to an event. I think I was always remembering what I'd forgotten from a very young age, whether it was, and probably one of my first things was exploring self-hypnosis and just seeking. I was seeking in different forms, traditional religion, but then it didn't feel quite right. And I had an early marriage, which I now recognize I could connect the dots. That was my first real initiation into a descent. It was very much a Persephone kind of descent, if you're familiar with that mythology. And yeah, and then over time, I just started filling in the pieces, started reading about the feminine mysteries, about the goddess. What is that? I mean, it was not something that was available very much in the 70s and 80s. And now it's, exploded, I think, in the last, I don't know, I can't really put a number to it, but I would say in particular, there's been another leap in the consciousness around this in the last 4 years. And there's an absolute kind of I feel a balancing that's happening. Whether everybody notices it or not is another question, but I feel that this is happening. And I think there's an opportunity, particularly in the second half of life, to really step into the wisdom of the feminine and the goddess and the great mother, which are, of course, one and the same in many ways. Yeah, so in my own journey, coming through midlife and menopause, and now on the other side of it for a number of years, I, felt, oh, I see. There's an acceleration that happens at this particular point in time. And that's when I really started to kind of put those pieces together and to start to work in that field. And it became more tangible, I think. We go through specific transitions and losses sometimes. It could be the loss of a parent, the loss of a child through going to university, it could be a divorce, it could be a sudden shift in career satisfaction, all of which kind of create an opening, like a portal. Possibly, if we choose, it's our mission. If we choose to accept it, we can ignore it, or we can decide to descend. And when we do that, it opens up so much possibility for healing and for reconnecting to the mother. I think that's and we're ready, we're ripe, and we're remembering at that point. And that's when it becomes more essential, I think, for us to age well. We need to reconnect to who we really are, which is an expression of the mother, and we need to reconnect to her, literally on the earth. Yeah. So it was a meandering answer, and I got into some of my my work as well, but there you go. That's the organic answer.
No, I think that's really wonderful. And yes, you did touch on a number of interesting points, because sometimes she said it is people come to this sort of work or this realization through a life-changing event in their lives,
Yes.
or as you did, a meander. I know myself, I never really felt that the religious or spiritual offerings for me in my youth were relevant to me, or I felt comfortable with them. I knew I've always was a spiritual person, but when your religion that's been offered to you doesn't fit, it's like, where do you go?
Yeah.
And the first book that I came across that actually talked about a divine feminine, of an ancient goddess that our ancestors worshipped or acknowledged, sort of was a real eye-opener. And that's was sort of led me into the work that I do myself. So that's really, it's comforting to hear that I'm not alone in my little meanders through life as well.
Yeah.
And also the work that you do, you're sort of focusing more on women, you said, in the second half of life. And we know in our modern society, when women get to a certain age, as I said in the introduction, we become almost invisible. And so we've spent our whole lives looking after everybody else, and now it's sort of our turn to look after us, but we don't know where to go. So
Yeah.
I think this is leading into the next question. I don't know if you've already answered it, but how is, women in their second life, how is midlife and menopause actually connected with this theme of the summit, which is about returning to the mother?
Yes, yes. So I think, yeah, we have touched on it a little bit, but I'm going to kind of back up a little bit. So I think, and this is kind of what I've discovered through my own journey and then in working with clients, is that, something can happen. The body starts to change, and all of that sort of the way we've been I'm indoctrinated is the word that comes to mind, but it's a little strong, but it's also not, right? We've been cultured, conditioned to see ourselves perhaps through a patriarchal lens. Do we have the beauty? Are we thin enough? Are we good enough? Are we blank enough? And so we play roles, right? We juggle all the things, many of us. We may have children, we may be married or have a partner. We may enter into the workforce and really dive into a career, a profession. So we play many roles, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what can happen over time, as we're creating the family, creating the career, is that we lose sight of who we are in our essence. And so then when something happens or we get to that certain age and suddenly maybe we've put on a little bit of weight or we're going through divorce, well, any of those things, or we start to feel different. Our hormones are doing unusual things. We feel unbalanced or moody or irritable and questioning. And so while, there's a medical reason for that, what I'm hoping is that we'll open up the discussion beyond the medicalization of what is a very transformative time of life. And the opportunity is for us to come home to ourselves, to figure out who am I underneath the roles I've played, the personalities, the physical form, all of that. And one of the best ways I know to do that is to root ourselves literally and metaphorically into the mother and return to her. This is the time for us to reconnect ourselves instead of being all up here in our thinking mind and trying to talk and think ourselves out of our problems, our challenges. We go inward into the body, into the earth, into the womb space, whether we have a physical or energetic womb space or not, into the heart, but get ourselves more firmly planted into her, where we can reconnect to her wisdom, into the earth, get back to our truest nature, and reconnect to the natural world. And this, I believe, is the key to thriving in the second half of life, coming into our own, knowing who we truly are, and radiating a confidence from the inside, not because we're trying to impress anybody, but because we are standing in who we are as an expression, an alchemical vessel for the goddess. And that radiance makes us suddenly very appealing and relevant, even though, we're not doing it because of that. But we find that we are, once again, very visible, very powerful. And the wisdom that we have, because we're connected to her, allows us to lead in a way that, I mean, my goodness, if women from the second half of life who are truly grounded were leading in politics and countries, we would not be in this mess. And so I think, there's a seismic shift happening underneath our feet that we can tap into and be the expression of the rebalanced divine feminine in the world, and bring that out into the work we do in the world, whether that's in our homes, in our communities, or on a bigger stage.
Mm, mm.
That was my soapbox moment there.
No, you're more than welcome to get on your soapbox. I bet you're nodding away. And yes, and you've sort of brought in a lot of the threads that this conference or the summit is about, because it's not just like a belief in a female divinity, it's also the connectionness of Mother Earth, who probably is an aspect of the female divinity,
Yes.
and also into this reconditioning, the lens that we've sort of been molded into believing through centuries and millennia of patriarchy, and how it should have taken us so far away from who we really are. And I really like it how you're sort of bringing home another thought that I've had. It's like we've got to get out of our head. We've got to get out of the sort of mental perception and back to the body, which to me is where our true connection with Mother, with the divine, with the feminine, however we want to perceive it, really is. It's a more central feeling, understanding of it. And yes, for women at the second stage in their life, we have the space now where
Yeah.
we are able to embrace what you call the wise woman archetype. So what do you mean by the wise woman archetype, especially for the women who this is probably the first time that they're hearing about that they have this power, this opportunity to come home, so to speak?
Yeah. So for me, there's different levels of this. So, and one aspect, the wise woman, is my way of kind of articulating the crone aspect of the triple goddess. So we have the virgin, sometimes called the maiden, we have the mother, and we have the crone. Now, again, because of patriarchy, there's an idea the crone is sort of this craggly, hunched over, dark kind of presence, which isn't true, and it can be true. It's a both and. And so people use other terms like queen and so wise woman is just a way that I describe this. And I think it's important to say that the wise woman isn't just the crone, right? At every age, we are not any one of those three. It's a triple goddess for a reason. In totality, we carry all the blueprints for all of those aspects. So, as the wise woman, we carry still with us the virgin. The virgin is not how, again, patriarchy has defined it. It means one who is whole unto herself. It also has that initiatory new excitement, the beginning, the birth of creative projects. We still get to birth creative projects, right? Doesn't matter how old we are, and we should, and we have a deeper connection now. So we bring that with us. We bring the mother, and of course, there's the great mother, which we've talked about. But we also have the mother aspect, the nurturer. Many of us are mothers, but we also birth, as again, creative projects. We nurture them into fruition. We bring them out into the world. And then the crone aspect, which is the ability to let go of what no longer serves us, the stripping away, in mythology, the story of Inanna, for example, there's the stripping away of her finery so that she can meet the dark sister and return with the gifts of the wise woman. Essentially, that's a very encapsulated way of talking about that particular story. But the wise woman is the one who is able to let go of 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 conditioning, of patriarchy, of those things and those times of life that have passed, but bring the wisdom into the heart. So you don't lose anything. You just let go of the parts of it, the stories, the identities, and so on that are. So that's what the wise woman does. The wise woman is like an alchemical vessel to bring in, to nurture, to birth, and then to release, and then to begin again. So it's a cyclical, that's a very feminine way of looking at the world, right? In this cyclical way. And the wise woman knows how to do that. I would also sort of describe the wise woman as somebody who is able to connect to the above and to the below through the vessel of the body to receive wisdom from the Great Mother. Every month we cycle. I talk a lot and I work with the lunar cycle. That's another piece we can talk about in a minute, maybe. But all of these pieces, all these aspects of the triple goddess are reflected in the different parts of the lunar cycle. And although we no longer bleed as the wise woman, as the crone, we are past our menstrual cycle. We can cycle with the moon and use every 28, 29 days as an opportunity to birth new projects, bring them to fulfillment, learn about ourselves, integrate our wisdom, let go, and go into the darkness, into the silence, receive new wisdom, and begin again every lunar cycle. So those are some of the different ways that I would define who the wise woman is.
No, and thank you very much for sharing. And I do know, I mean, it's definitely in here, and because in today's world where everybody's connected on social media and all around the world, that moon observation in particular, or say manifesting with the new moon and banishing it with the waning moon is very popular. But I'm getting a feeling that your work's a little bit like mine, but there's more to working with the moon than that. Are you able to share a little bit more to sort of entice people into looking at the moon in a different way as well?
Yes, yes, yes. So this is very much based on, and I love to give credit to, the lineage of teachers that I've had. And Christine Page, who you mentioned in my bio, has done a lot of teaching around this, which I am now bringing into the work that I do. And this was quite a revelation to me when I first heard it, because there is that emphasis. And I have a daughter, she's 19, so very much a Gen Z, and they're all into the crystals and the manifesting, like you said, at the new moon, and some of them manifesting at the full moon and so on. But this is a different practice. So my understanding, my interpretation of it, and I think it's based on Demetra George, Mysteries of the Dark Moon. I'm sure it's one of the books you probably, one of the first ones you read, one of the first ones I read as well. There's a 3-day kind of phase of the dark moon. And so it's the whole month is an opportunity to know ourselves more fully. And as I had mentioned, when the right after the new moon, we're in the waxing phase for those first 14 days. That's the time of the Virgin. That's the time of instigating new projects, usually have more drive, more inspiration, and so on. Around the time of the full moon, that's the time of illumination and when things are being revealed. So then you start to refine and look. Then in the second half, in that waning phase, is when you're starting to gather the pieces, looking at what you're ready to let go of, noticing throughout the entire lunar cycle where the parts of yourself you have met, the light shadow and the dark shadow, the parts you didn't want to look at, the parts you put to the side, maybe a part of yourself from when you were younger that was not healed. All of this stuff comes up, right? In people we meet, people who trigger us, when we get annoyed, all of those things. We can look at that and say, okay, what is the wisdom of this that I want to integrate into my heart? And then what are the stories, the identities, the beliefs that I can let go of? And then we can literally take those things, and at the time of the dark moon, we celebrate what we've learned, what we've done. We asked the Great Mother to take, and we can literally put it into a bowl of water, speak what we're releasing, offer it to Mother Earth, to ask her with gratitude, I ask you to transmute this into love, and I'm empty. And so we empty ourselves at the time of the dark moon. And then on the actual day of the dark moon, instead of running around manifesting, we actually use that. It's our red tent day. So we get still, we get quiet, we nurture ourselves. We may gather in community with women to have beautiful conversations, to nurture, to do our art, to express ourselves in a very gentle way, but emptied. And then on the third day of the dark moon, which is the day after the new moon, then we listen to receive, we connect and root into the mother. We bring energy, our creative blueprint, up into our body, and we receive new seeds of inspiration and jot it down, and then we start to work with it, and around we go. And every time we do this, we're spiraling upwards. We're becoming more whole. We're knowing ourselves more fully. We're changing and evolving, and releasing and emptying it. And as we empty, then we make space for more wisdom, more connection, all of that. So that's how I work with the dark moon.
Yes, and it's very similar, I guess, to how I work as well. The purpose or the goal is to more align yourselves with this continual ebb and flow. And not only do you have the lunar cycle, but so widening it out, then we have like the seasonal cycle as well.
Yes,
So
exactly. Yes.
on a bigger scale. And I don't know about you, but the more that I sort of ebb and learn to ebb and flow with the moon, and the more that she reveals to me, and also in the aspect of Mother Earth and coming back to the mother, the less I feel I need to manifest,
Yes.
because you're
Yes.
becoming more in tune with this ebb and flow. And I don't know, because yes, Demeter George and the Mysteries of the Dark Moon is one of the classics, one of the first books that sort of brought me up to this path as well. And whether this sort of underlying sort of early feminist, early goddess teaching, early revelation as to stepping into a more sort of matriarchal, cyclic, as you said, spiral of our connectiveness with the greater whole, is something that Gen Z haven't yet discovered in
Yes.
there. I mean, it's good that they're working with the moon, but it's almost like we need to take it an extra level
Yes.
as well. But then maybe this is, as you said, coming back to the wise woman archetype, that after years of doing it one way, you begin to realize that there is a deeper
Yes.
level, and something else gets revealed to you. And I think this is what's really, should I say, delightful being in the second half of life, is you can look back and say, oh yes, we've done this, I've done that, but now I'm understanding that there's a deeper level to sort of bring that knowledge that I've maybe not have looked at up to the surface and out.
Yes. Yeah. And I think those things that we haven't healed from our younger years really do come up for healing at this time. Um, and they're perhaps amplified by the hormonal things that are going on in the body, right? It becomes even more. And that's why I think there is so much that happens, and suddenly we're just not happy. For example, because I do a lot of work with women who are suddenly dissatisfied in their careers after 20, 30 years. And they want to make a switch. And a big piece of that is purpose and meaning, whereas before they may have been more driven by other things like money, or the impression of their parents who guided them in a certain direction, or status or whatever, or it could also be genuine, love of this thing, but it can shift, right? I don't believe we have one purpose necessarily throughout our entire lives that's expressed as a specific to do. I think can shift and express itself as many different things throughout our lifetime. There's something I wanted to say, and just to backtrack a little bit about the Gen Z. I feel that maybe this is my hopefulness, my virgin excitement coming out, but I feel like it's possible that with this rebalancing that I believe is happening, despite evidence to the contrary right now in the world. I believe this is happening. Maybe that is what the evidence is, right? It's the last gasps of patriarchy showing itself in its most unpleasant way, right? But maybe the Gen Zs and all of these, I guess they're called alphas now, the ones that are really young. Like already my daughter's feeling old, she says. She's, 19, but there are already like 3 groups coming in behind her that have different names, like alpha, and I think beta is already starting to arrive in. Anyway, I feel like there might be an acceleration happening. So it might not be that these children, younger people, are going to have to wait until the second half of life before they really can access this remembering. And maybe that's why the interest in crystals and manifesting at the moon is that they actually are remembering sooner and quicker. And maybe it's because we are paving the way. Maybe that's part of it. As we do our work, we're healing the ancestral lineage, going both backwards and forwards. So that could be part of it, or it could just be the natural evolution that each generation comes in just as we did. We came, my mother didn't have this awareness at all. My grandmother certainly didn't. And that's not to say there aren't lineages with wise women. That's the other aspect I wanted to mention, actually. The wise woman. It comes from, the wisdom keepers, the herbalists, the medicine women. That's another kind of aspect of that meaning. Sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit as things are popping in. I do this all the time, very organic, not necessarily structured, but hopefully I'll bring the pieces together. But yeah, I just think, and I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that these discussions, there's more and more of them happening. More people are listening, including younger people. And it's not too late for a woman in the second half of life to radically evolve and transform and heal. And I would add that I think sometimes the physical things that happen to us in midlife can be improved through the spiritual understanding and the transformation and doing the inner work, because the body is a holistic vehicle. It's a whole. And I think the overemphasis on medicalizing this time of life again is another patriarchal vestige. It's more about selling a drug, a hormone, dare I say, big pharma, right? The corporate machine that is behind so much of what we're taught and believed to be true. I think that's getting unraveled bit by bit, as part of this, and so again, here we are, the women in the second half of life with the wisdom, ready to go. We still have energy, and we can work with we know how to work with people. We know how to see through multiple perspectives. I think we're the ones that can heal the division and polarity that's been, again, I would say, manipulated into being. And while we're distracted and fighting, we don't have our our connection to the earth, our connection to our divinity,
Mm.
in a feminine, in that balanced masculine feminine way. So the wise woman is here now for a reason, a really important reason, I think.
Mm.
On a big stage or on a small stage, it doesn't matter what size your stage is, we're the ones, we're the wisdom keepers. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
A big soapbox moment again. Getting riled up.
no, that's fine. That's what this whole conference it's about. It's about discussions and people for to be able to speak what's on their mind and this connection. And you made a number of points that I just want to sort of reiterate that there's an observation that I've also made, like I've over the years and holding public events, that I'm getting like maybe the grandchildren coming along and we're talking about 3-4 year olds and they're wanting to do the physical things. I do some beach rituals where we do the releasing, we throw things or make
Yes.
prayers or offerings into the water. It's a very
Yes.
symbolic way.
Love it.
And the children are wanting to get involved. I also go to markets and you're seeing the children, and it doesn't matter if they're boys or girls, or whoever they identify with, but they're wanting the crystals and they're really insistent, shall we say, and they're very determined as to what they want. And it's not just because it's a thing, it's they know why they want these things. So it's almost like there's a lot of old souls, so these
Yes,
spiritual term coming
exactly.
back. And I think a lot of it too, as you said, women in their second life being more open over sort of rediscovering this or coming back to the mother. So it's this flow-on effect as well. But then we still have this lingering sort of patriarchal perceptions, and it's sort of disappointing in some aspect. It's almost like a dual sword where the younger women are, or some are, you did mention Big Pharma and their drugs, but also the young women are injecting their lips and putting on false
Yes.
eyelashes. And also we are getting told that, or being fed that wrinkles and, grey hair, I'm
Yes.
letting my hair grow out, is not appealing. And I think the more that we become comfortable, as you said earlier, coming back to our bodies, accepting that bodies age, and this almost stepping back into this, I'm comfortable, I don't need to live up to this forever virgin stereotype. That also helps pave the way for the younger generations to embrace their own uniqueness, regardless of
Yes.
where they fit in the whole
Yes.
scheme of things as well. And I think that's
Yes.
part of the wise woman archetype that we are
Yes.
all embracing, regardless of what age we're at.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. I want to pick up on that word you just used, uniqueness. My daughter has commented more than once, and she's in that demographic. She goes, Mom, all of these women, they're starting to look like everybody else. The lips are the same size, like they all look the same. Why? Why would you want that? There's no uniqueness. It's sort of like I don't know, maybe it's a representation of conformity to a standard, yeah, I don't know. It's a toughie. So it's almost like there's two streams, and we need to just kind of connect them back up. And that wisdom of it's almost like unity through the acceptance and the honoring of diversity instead of kind of a homogenization of everybody into, one way of looking, one way of being, um, hunched over our phones and our devices. That's another thing. The kids now are like, wow, I wish that I'd grown up without all of this. There's wisdom in a lot of these kids. I think we're going to see some pretty interesting turnarounds in the next few years. Again, being very hopeful, but I see the possibility, you know,
Mm.
so we don't have to end up slaves to the man, as they used to say back in the day, slaves to the phones, to the devices, to the
Mm.
digital world. I don't want to
Yeah.
become digital, do you?
Definitely not. And this whole sort of the revelations of AI, maybe I'm showing my age, but she quite frightens me. It's just like,
Yes,
we'll,
absolutely.
as you said, we're losing our uniqueness, we're losing our humanity.
Yes.
And then we did sort of mention briefly about, the world stage, and we are losing, as I said, our diversity in not only what we look like or how we perceive ourselves, but the news we receive, how we see diversity in our world as well. Not to mention diversity of the species and of other species on our planet, as we're trying to modify more and more until we become one big robot. And it's
Yeah.
based on one person or a group of people's perception. And I think this is the underlying thing. It's just like, when we conform, whose idea of perfection are we conforming to? Because some of
Yeah.
this
And who does it
perfect,
serve? You know, who does it serve? I don't think it serves humanity. I don't think it serves her, capital H. The
Mhm.
word, it does not serve the earth at all, you know?
Mm.
So,
And I
yeah.
think this is why we need to have these discussions about coming back to the mother, returning back to her in whatever perception we may see her to be, whether she's a divine figure, a goddess, or just our connection to Earth itself,
Yes.
the planet that we live on, because it's living and breathing, because that's our reminder of our originality, where we came from, the Earth, the mother. And in my mind, this is where we flow into being a woman or our own mothers. We are all birthed from
Yes.
mothers, from women
Yes.
who, in one way, could be a representation or representative of the earth, and how we treat women
Yes.
is how we treat the earth. So,
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
It's
Now,
all connected.
it is, and I just want to make a little quick comment because we are running out of time. Is that when you're talking about the moons and you're talking about the 3 day cycle over um the dark moon, that also includes that first sliver of the new moon, and you're talking about how the last one is when we sort of sit there and wait for the inspiration to come through. And what came to my mind is the sacred silence. We're in a
Yeah.
world where there's so much stimulation, so much chatter. We're on our phones 24 hours a day. We're losing our dark skies. We're not seeing all the stars in the sky as we used to see them. We don't know how to relate to silence. And often it's in silence where we can come back to, and you mentioned that connection with the great above and with the great below. It's in that silence that we
Absolutely.
can come back to wholeness.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
100%.
I would love to continue this discussion with you, Karen, but we are running out of time. And I do just want to mention that you have an offering for our audience entitled Becoming the Wise Woman. Would you like to share a little bit about that?
Yes.
And then, yes, that's
Yes,
fantastic.
absolutely. So it's a sort of like a mini ebook or a download, but it also includes an audio meditation. And so what I've done is just put together what I feel are like three essential feminine wisdom practices that can really reconnect us to our wisdom, our passion, our joy, our vitality in the second half of life, but really it can be for anyone. And it includes, as I said, an audio meditation, which helps you to meet and connect in the unseen realm with your inner wise woman, to have conversation, to sit in that sacred silence, to look, to get comfortable doing that, and to receive information from her and her, because it's all part of the same, you know. Um, it also contains the instructions, sort of an overview. There's a deeper version that I work with my clients and my members every month, but it has the overview of how to work with the lunar cycle and what to do during the 3 days of the dark moon. So you get an overview of that. And it also contains a practice that uses these same principles that I talk about for again connecting to ourselves, but using writing, using the written word, a process. It's like a journaling process, but I find very powerful. Again, to get information, to connect. So that's all available. And you're going to post the link to that. What else do I have? So I always have new cohorts kind of arising at different times for personal transformational work, for those women who are feeling a need perhaps to explore their career, and is there a shift they want to make? What does that look like? Stay, go, pivot to something else, or start their own thing. And I do work with women privately as well. So
And they can all reach out to you through your website,
yes.
wisewomanleading.com. And yes, the links to both the offering that you are providing our listeners and also to your website will be all found below this recording. And do you do like events or anything? Have you got anything big that's sort of bubbling away for the new year?
Yeah, I do online retreats that I co-host. There will be something coming up in the new year, not fully structured yet, but it will be, I believe, around the ancient mysteries. So that's kind of exciting. There may be an in-person retreat starting to be planned for 2025. And I do in the Toronto area, in the summertime in particular, I gather with women on the beach once a week, and we do freestyle movement expression, connecting with nature on the shores of Lake Ontario, which is beautiful. It's like it's our ocean, our version of an ocean. Yeah, so there's always things cooking. Every 29 days, I get new ideas.
Yes, and
So
that's just a really good example as to when you're working with the moon, what can happen. That's fantastic. Oh, Karen, it's again, I'd like to, so we're running out of time, and just would like to thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us today. It's been an absolute delight to have you joining me in these discussions.
thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it.
More than welcome. And for everyone who's watching, Natalia, thank you. I hope you have enjoyed these discussions that I've been having with Karen Brown as much as I have. Please check out her links to her website and all her other offerings below. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Blessings.